Now, in the previous lesson, in the previous video, I talked about the spiritual direction, the meaning of the spiritual direction, and I also talked about the qualities of the spiritual director. And now, let us talk about choosing the spiritual director. And this is mainly concerned with the person who needs to be directed. What should the person who is in need of choosing a spiritual director do? Well, if I will start by stating the following. Choosing the spiritual director needs the help of God, the light to see who can make it, who can bring you closer to God. Needs God Himself to help you. And by so saying, the person who is in need of a spiritual director should pray before even choosing the spiritual director, seeking the assistance of God. But also, after having prayed, this person who is in need of the spiritual director should now discern. Having known the qualities of a spiritual director, he should now be able to look around his campus, his environment, or her environment. Say, hey, such a person has got these qualities and is capable of helping me to attain my goal of being united to God. Then he has to choose. Then he or she has to choose the spiritual director. Now, that means after praying, the person who is in need of a spiritual director should make the investigation. And when making investigation, sometimes it is very important to just have time to sometimes have some moment of thinking about the person you want to choose. But now, having chosen him, it is also possible that you can find that this person can't suit for you. This person can't help you be united with God. And it seems that maybe his all direction seems not to be directed to God. It is allowable and advisable to opt to leave. It is advised. Because this is a matter which is very great. Spiritual direction is very great. You are seeking God, not seeking people. Get me? Yeah, that's right. Now, that's all I can say about choosing the spiritual director. Pray to God, make investigations, choose the person, approach him, tell him or her that I need you to be, I would like you to be to help me, to be my companion in this spiritual journey. Then after that, you get to live with him or her helping you. Now, let me speak about the spiritual direction by correspondence. What does the spiritual direction by correspondence mean? When we speak of spiritual direction by correspondence, we mean that these two people, the director and the directee, do not meet in one place to talk about the spiritual affairs, but they just share messages. Hello, how are you? Today I've got this and this and this. I'd like to talk to you through the phone. Or let me write to you the letter about this and this. This is something which was done previously by some people during those moments, times of St. Augustine and other people, where people were seeking help through writing. Writes a letter, and that letter gets into the spiritual director, and then he gets an answer by means of letters. But now, it is not advised. It is not advised. But the main reason is this. As I'm going to tell you the duties of a spiritual director, you will see that all the duties of a spiritual director can't be fulfilled through correspondence. The spiritual director can't know you exactly, can't know the spiritual directee exactly how. Can't know you because that contact is missing. And he cannot now control the spiritual director, the spiritual directee. He cannot encourage him. He or she cannot even now uproot the defects as I'm going to talk about the duties of a spiritual director, they cannot be performed. But above all, that secrecy which has to exist between the spiritual director and the spiritual directee is lost, or it is possible that secrecy, that letter falls into the third party or the third person, and then falls into the wrong person, in the hands of the wrong person, and all the secrecy is what now? The internal forum now becomes completely distorted, or it can't be cultivated through this correspondence. Now, having said that, now let us talk about it. Let us finish our lecture or our lesson, our very beautiful lesson, with the issue of duties of a spiritual director. What are the duties of a spiritual director? Well, first of all, the spiritual director has to know the soul is directing. Yeah, he has to know the soul is directing. Why should we know it? Of course, he has to know it because he or she needs to solve the problems of the person who is being directed. So knowing him or her will help a spiritual director now be able to apply all his knowledge and all his power in directing him or her. And by the way, it is important to know the past of the person so as to direct him towards the future. What do I mean here? I mean that it is very important to know the way of reacting of a person who is to be directed, so that you can direct him towards the proper ways of reacting. And so the person who is directed should be able to tell the spiritual director that, hi, my behavior, I behave this way. These are my hobbies, these are my likes, these are what. Everything should be poured out for the proper direction of that person. So knowing that the soul to be directed is very important for the direction of that soul. By the way, here the spiritual director should be cautious about believing everything which is taught, because if he believes everything, it is sometimes these people who are directed out of fear, they can make lies, and if you use lies to make a direction, that means you build your direction on the weak foundations. So that's very, very important, knowing the soul to be directed. Secondly, to give instruction. What is the purpose of giving instruction? The purpose of giving instructions is to make sure that the person being directed can attain independence. What do I mean by dependence? I mean he can walk himself or herself in this journey, spiritual journey, without the need of assistance. That's the purpose. He needs assistance. He needs to be dependent to walk, to judge, to solve his own problems. So you have to instruct him or her. The spiritual director should instruct him or her. And by so doing, instructions means that the spiritual director, he or she avoids or solves the problem of overdependence. The person being directed should not be dependent too much dependent on the spiritual director. So overdependence should be discouraged. So instruction should be given. Now there is something which is very important to speak about, the kind of instruction to be given. The kind of instruction to be given should be something which is conducive for the spiritual growth. So it is proper for the person, the director, to give those dogmatic teachings of the church, and all things that all people, all faithful, have agreed upon. And it is not proper to speak about those points which are deviating from from deviating from the common agreements, because this might make that person directed be curious to know this and forget about the spiritual affairs. So that point should be encouraged and emphasized. That's all about the duty of giving instruction. Now let us talk about the duty of encouraging the soul. Why should we encourage the soul? Well, the point here is the spiritual journey is not an easy journey as people might think. It is a difficult way. There are times of failure, there are times of falling, there are times where a person becomes completely unable even to produce that desire of continuing in the spiritual journey. So here, encouragement is needed. Sense of optimism should be encouraged. Now, how should it be encouraged? Should the person be motivated just for the sake of being motivated? No. Here, the person needs to be motivated, first of all, increasing by showing that he has to increase his dependence on God, being faithful to God's grace, and also, moreover, distrusting the self, which means making himself humble before God's assistance. Yeah, that's about encouragement. And by so saying on the issue of encouragement, the spiritual director shouldn't harm the spiritual directee. He shouldn't harm the spiritual directee. He should make sure that everything he does, everything he or she does, should be conducive for the growth, spiritual growth. And also now there is a point of, this first point is about controlling the spiritual life of the person being directed. What does this point mean? This point means that the spiritual director should be able to approve, to give a way forward on the means used by the spiritual directee. Spiritual means, that is, the spiritual director should now be able to speak about the meditation, the plan of life, the practice of charity, everything, the practice of practice of mortification, everything which is the means for spiritual growth should be into the judgment of the spiritual director. That is, and by so doing, when the spiritual director controls those means of spiritual growth, we speak of him being the spiritual, being faithful to that activity of controlling the spiritual life of the person being directed. And now let us talk about also correcting defects. That's the fifth duty of the spiritual director. A person being directed, being a person, being the human being, he or she has got faults. He is not perfect. He has got dispositions which makes him or her to fall into error. Then the spiritual director is responsible to see and know them, that this person has got these dispositions, these errors, these faults, these acts. This should be uprooted by every means so as to grow into holiness. He or she, the spiritual director has to correct the defects. But by the way, finally, and the sixth duty is to direct the spiritual directee by progressive stages. What does this mean? The spiritual director has got a duty of knowing at which stage exactly is the soul or is the spiritual directee is at. Is it at the beginning level, or just at the level of proficiency? So that once he or she knows the stage, he can make sure that he or she demands the correct demands or the correct needs, demands the correct demands from the person being directed, but also even the needs of the person being directed becomes now it is easy for the spiritual director to know them. So he has to direct the soul progressively by stages, not over demanding and not being the obstacle towards progress, because he can be over demanding on the issues when just the person that's the beginner level and is obliged to do things which are above his capacity or beyond his capacity. And also the spiritual director can be now against progress because he can just unknowingly or unconscious of the fact that maybe the soul has progressed to the higher stages, and he makes demands which are just at the demands of the beginner, the demands of the person who is at the beginner level. So it is important for the spiritual director to know that duty. And the last duty of the spiritual director is to observe secrecy. What does this mean? That this means that all matters of internal forum are to be kept as a secret between the spiritual director and the spiritual directee. And here there is something spoken about the supernatural charisms and its phenomena. Once the spiritual director is told of the supernatural charisms and the phenomena, he needs to keep secrecy. Because if he violates secrecy, he might exalt himself that, oh my God, see, I have directed this person, and there's no progress, and everything leading to pride and self-exaltation can be the result of not obeying secrecy. So thank you for watching. In the next lesson, the next video, I'm going to talk about the qualities of a person being directed. Thank you for watching. I'll be back.